Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back in with you guys for another show, for another episode of our Gooner Talk podcast, which is obviously our weekly show covering all the latest Arsenal news. And as it's international break, having a bit of a chat. Now, I've realised that I'm currently doing that thing where I talk to the screen when I should actually be talking to this, which is the camera. I keep doing that. But it's good to look at the screen because by looking at the screen, I can keep an eye on what these two are doing, which is usually something not so good. But thank you ever so much, everyone, for tuning in. And I'm going to introduce our panel. First off, it's the man from Miami. It's Jon. How you doing, mate?
Doing good. Thanks for having me on again.
See, we talked about this. I said that, look, we're trying out a whole new intro for a live show. I've managed to work out how I get the video on. And what I want these guys to do is to mute themselves. But what they forgot to do was then preempt me talking to them and then unmute. So it was a seamless reply. But Jon, what was that, mate? That was pathetic. I could actually hear the sound of your mic frantically kicking to unmute yourself.
Well, I didn't know if you were going to drop the ball on that, so I had to step in there.
I never leave myself muted when I want to talk. So,
yeah. Well, it's good to be back on again. Thanks for having me. It's going to be good to talk some Arsenal while there's none going on. So
exactly. And second of all, Mike, always a pleasure. It's just second nature to say that, but then I realise I don't mean it.
Every time you introduce me, you seem like you have some other sort of gastrointestinal disorder that, the look on your face. Are we talking Arsenal or Newcastle today with that shirt? That's what I want to know.
I mean, to be fair,
I didn't come prepared with my Geordie information.
I did a tactical breakdown with this, and I was getting called a referee. So it's either a Newcastle shirt or a referee shirt. I quite like it. It looks black on camera. It's not. It's like a dark blue. But obviously the white stripes don't really help my cause. It's slimming supposedly. And when your missus says that you need to wear a slimming shirt, I think that tells you all you need to know.
I just bought 7 of those, and I'm going to put them all on at the same
time. First off, apologies that there's not been much content about. I've been quite ill. The thing about being a teacher going back to school the first week is that you're introduced to all these new germs again in the atmosphere of the school, and it made me ill. So that's why there's not been apology if I still cough, because I am still feeling the effects. But we will push on. There's been, whilst Jon, you said there's not much Arsenal, I think there's been plenty of stuff to talk about related to Arsenal, and that's why we're here. Thank you ever so much for the people that are tuning in our live chat. Loving the beard, Jon says Makiza. Really big fan of your beard there. Blue Whale says evening. I didn't know you could get internet under the water. That's a bit strange. Makiza says evening, lads. James Dennison says good evening, gents. Thank you ever so much to the people who are tuning in this evening and taking the time out of your Sunday. But let's crack on and talk about what we're here for, which is obviously Arsenal. Now, there has been international football on, but I want to start with sort of the call-ups of who was sort of called up, because there were some surprise inclusions and omissions that we're going to talk about. The first off, I want to talk about inclusions, and that is Matteo Guendouzi being called up, where Paul Pogba was obviously left out of the team through, I don't know if it was injury or whatever, or he just didn't fancy it. That is very much Pogba these days, it seems. But Guendouzi took his place. Jon, were you surprised at the call-up, or do you think it's definitely earned?
No, I think it's definitely earned. And as much as it's earned partially because Pogba's injured. But, I mean, you can't really doubt how great Guendouzi's been recently. We've seen it, shades of it last season. But, I mean, he's really stepped up in a big way. And it's really exciting to see him actually get the credit for that, especially in the national team, because I think he's such a talent. And I was a little concerned about where, his maturity level a little bit, but he's been showing, and more specifically, like what his position would really be, but he's really showing himself to be that kind of like almost like a box to box midfielder in a way. And I think it's going to be really cool for France to see him there. And I think it's more than deserved.
I mean, Mike, when we talk about Guendouzi, he's still just 20 years old. This guy came in from Lorient, 8 million quid, one of the only gems we really got from Sven during his small time at the club, before he was cast away by Raul Sanllehi, it seems. It is quite staggering, the rise that he's gone on. A lot of people were concerned when he started that game against Man City, which seems an eternity ago now, in the first game of the season last year. I mean, we were still so shocked that they'd made that choice. But he's come on leaps and bounds. But this season, he looks a completely different animal. And with that hair, it is a rather animalistic player that we've got. So for you, how long do you think it'll be till we start seeing this guy regularly performing for that France first team?
I think this is the beginning of it. I mean, it may be a bit early for him on a World Cup winning team. And I don't know, because I haven't really spent a ton of time watching international football, whether he's gotten minutes in the first of their 2 games. I would imagine he's certainly not starting. But this is about integrating him into a winning squad, the French football team. And with him, is more as important as anything else, as important as his play on the pitch, is his presence in the dressing room, his presence on the sideline. I mean, it's infectious. And, you don't call up a guy to the national team just because he likes to hug people and he has funny hair. But, I mean, it's amazing to see what he's done around the Arsenal dressing room, the positivity that he seems to be putting in, the hard work. He doesn't seem to be somebody who, because of his youth, is just a goofball and doesn't really get it yet. I mean, I'd say he's probably one of the people who understands the derby more than almost anyone else in that dressing room, given how much turnover there's been in the last few years. And he's only been there. This is only his 4th derby to participate in, if you include the cup game last year. So, the guy gets it. He's 20, acting 16, but going on 25 in my mind. And you need guys like that. So and despite what I thought, which was that maybe he was being pushed a little too early, his play in at least 3 out of the 4 games this season has been almost impossible to impeach. And at least 2 of those games, he's man of the match. So, I think that guy's got a stellar career in front of him. I'm glad that we haven't sold him to PSG yet. It'll happen. But yeah, I love it for him, and it couldn't be happier for the guy, because he's not done a thing wrong.
No, he really hasn't, and it is a pleasure to watch him on the pitch. And I mean, he even sneaked into my fantasy football team over this week. You're still not playing, Mike? Still not playing?
I mean, at least you have Arsenal guys on there instead of rooting for
Well, I have one rule, and that is no Spurs players. That is my one rule. In fairness, I only have the one Arsenal player at the moment, which is Guendouzi.
If I am jailed for assault, it's going to be because somebody at the pub was okay with the fact that Sane scored or Mane scored, because at least he started him as his captain.
I feel like that's one of the many reasons why you would get jailed for assault.
Well, but I'm a lover, not a fighter, John. I could get jailed for a lot of other things that happen at the pub, but not for assault, unless it's about fantasy football.
Fair enough.
To be honest, I was debating the other day. I put a tweet out saying, should we do a weekly show looking at the fantasy football? Because we obviously do the league, and the link to our fantasy league is always in the description with the videos.
I will do the opposite of retweet those tweets.
What is the opposite of a retweet?
I'd throw my phone out the window.
I was just going to say.
Throwing the phone away with the tweet on the screen.
And then I'll tweet a copy of myself throwing the phone out the window and throwing up at that show.
Yeah, I mean, he to be fair, I'm still debating, because I don't know if he's someone who'll pick me up loads of points, because he's sort of that guy that has a really good game without having loads of impact on the score sheet. Obviously, you got that fantastic assist for Aubameyang, but I'm hoping, and we are going to discuss the midfield a little bit later on ahead of the Watford game, but I think Emery's got some decisions about what he needs to do in that midfield, and we will talk about that in a bit. Now, sticking with the France team, obviously there was a guy that was not included in the side, and a lot of people are happy as Arsenal fans, because it means that, he's not going to get any risk of injury, unless he gets injured in training, which does happen to Arsenal players more regularly than you think. But John, Lacazette, not in the team again. They stick with Giroud, and I put a tweet out of this, and it's fair to say it garnered quite a bit of debate, this tweet that I put out about saying that I thought that Laca should have been in. Giroud's turning 30 this month. Yes, I'm aware that he's done very well for them. Obviously, they won a World Cup with him up top, didn't score a single goal, but they won a World Cup with him up top. For me, Lacazette, and people say that Giroud's he's the big hold-up guy. I know what he does. He holds the ball up. He brings other people into play like Mbappe and Griezmann. But for me, and tell me if I'm wrong, but Lacazette is one of the best hold-up players in the league in the front line. The way he holds players off to turn and score, to lay people off. Tell me why he's not in that French squad.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a loaded question. I think he should be in the French squad. I have I really don't. I just don't think that he rates Lacazette. I don't. Maybe it's a fitness thing. We've seen it in our squad that he doesn't always play the full 90. Maybe that's a element of it. I've always been kind of concerned as to why Lacazette gets pulled off it as often as he does, especially in games when he's playing incredibly. Maybe there's something going on there. I don't know. Maybe that's a factor in his mind. But I agree with you in terms of his ability to hold up the play. I think it's just as good as Giroud's. And for someone who's not even close to as tall as Giroud or as built as Giroud is, it's pretty incredible. And then when you consider everything else that he offers to going forward, I mean, he allows us to play the way we do because he can drop back. He offers defensive work. He'll come back. He's almost like another midfielder when we need it. And with someone like Aubameyang, like pushing forward, that helps us a lot. So now you add that with like a player like Mbappe. I mean, it confuses me why he's not on the France side. And at the end of the day, you look at the fact that they won a World Cup, and it's hard to argue that if he's saying, look, this works, then, okay, maybe it does. But I still think that when you look on paper and look at how the two perform and have been performing in the league, it's a no-brainer. It's a no-brainer. I don't understand why Lacazette isn't starting for France, or at least getting to play there. Like, I don't get it. I don't understand, and I think it's a mistake. And I think that look, he's going to make the decisions. He has his reasons, but I don't agree with him.
Mike, a lot of people have turned around to me and said that Deschamps doesn't like Lacazette, and at the same time, Giroud has worked for them, and if he does work and it ain't broke, don't fix it, that sort of things. But my argument is that Giroud is turning 33. He is declining. He's not regularly starting, so he's not always going to be match fit for them if they want to play with him. And you have to evolve. You have to move on. And people said that I don't get how you can argue because they've won the World Cup and they got to the finals of the Euros. That surely they should be able to, surely the decisions he is making are the correct ones. And I see that point of view, but at the same time, I would feel that you need to move on from winning a World Cup. You need to move on to what's next. And for me, Lacazette at 28 years of age, I believe he is that next step for France as a possible striker. And they're never going to put Benzema back in. And for me, Benzema is one of the best enablers on the field in Europe. So what's your take on it?
I mean, there's obviously nude photos involved.
It is the French squad.
Of course,
they do have history.
There is a background in this.
Yeah, I mean, they're honestly, maybe it's not like completely nude, maybe it's tasteful, but like there's something besides football that has to do with this. And I'm
like,
being serious.
Dele Alli style over here. Like, what are we talking?
Alessandrini, I think it was.
Yeah,
Alessandrini.
No, there was that one. Remember? Yeah. No, it's not
Alessandrini. It was Valbuena, wasn't it? It was
Valbuena.
Yeah, Valbuena, Benzema. I mean, there's some shady stuff that happens with the French national team, but Lacazette doesn't seem like a guy that you would have to ban. He doesn't seem like a bad influence on the club. But
although, you did see that I had to take down one of these videos because of Ola's image.
Well, that's yeah. I think Ola created that.
Was doing in that image.
Just because Ola has a vivid imagination doesn't mean you got to put that on Lacazette. But
it was Lacazette in his photo.
But Ola was right there telling him what to do.
Maybe that's why they don't want him on there. Maybe he doesn't fit that naked picture kind of guy, and he just doesn't fit in with everyone else.
Maybe other people were just like intimidated by what they saw.
Yeah, there it is.
In any case, Deschamps has made it pretty clear that that he's going to win this fight. I mean, that he's not. And I just, again, John's covered every reason why he should be on the pitch, and I don't disagree with anything that he said. Which is why I don't think it's about play on the pitch. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think they're fortunate enough to have the luxury of the dominance that they have of sufficient second players that they can put up top, and just an overall team that's rarely going to struggle with or without Lacazette. But there can be no footballing reason why he's not on that team.
No,
I just don't see it.
It's and obviously got Sebastian Haller as well at West Ham, who's doing very well this season. For me, I can see Haller getting in ahead of Lacazette because he's the similar stature to Giroud, except he's faster. He's got more technical ability than Giroud. And even though he might be not performing as well throughout the season, I'm only going off predictions what we might see. I can see Deschamps going with him over Laca. So
is that the West Ham fella?
Yeah.
I think there's something to do with like a fitness thing or some concern there. I mean, we like I said, we've seen Lacazette get taken off by Emery and even by Wenger when he was here. So, like, and these are games when he's playing really well. I'm not saying that I know the answer to that. I'm saying that it would explain at least part of it that has nothing to do with his talent on the pitch. Maybe there's a concern over whether he can, be going 90 minutes at a time, and it's a real concern maybe.
Well, for two games, in a week over 4 months of the year. I mean, in a season where there's not a summer tournament extended, but I mean, I wouldn't think that you must have only guys on the squad that can play 90 minutes.
But if there's a concern, I'm not saying that that's a valid.
I'm glad he didn't go.
No, me too. And I'm not saying that there's that's a valid reason why he didn't go. But I'm thinking maybe it's at least a reason or a consideration that he's making, because otherwise, I'm like, from a footballing perspective, I'm left with nothing other than if it ain't broke, don't fix it, which isn't a very satisfying argument.
Well, because you could argue he should have been on and probably would have added to the dynamic last summer.
I think you would have. That's my point, though. Yeah. So it's weird.
It is weird. It's very strange. Whether or not he gets back in, he's gonna if he keeps scoring goals, I don't see any reason why Deschamps can turn around and omit him, because it would make no sense to. But
has he not been asked straight out why isn't?
I'm not in personal contact with him, so
didn't say by you. No,
I'll just give him a ring, and I'll.
I know I'm more likely to get an interview with Deschamps than you are, but I haven't.
And there we go. And there's your first name drop, people. There.
That's not a name drop.
That isn't. Oh yeah, it's your reference. Oh, I interviewed to Josh Kroenke.
I didn't say. I didn't name drop.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, moving on.
Josh doesn't like when I name drop.
Oh dear, yeah, he doesn't. Amir in the chat says it seems like they want the skill set Giroud brings, i.e. the big powerful target. They have speedy, tricky players on the wings. They do, and I get that. But my point is that I think that Lacazette is a very, very good hold-up player.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you saw what he did in the North London derby. He was dropping deep. He was taking the ball. He was driving forwards. He was holding defenders off, laying balls off. And that sort of comes on to the next part of our front three that was sort of news. There's a couple of things been going on. Aubameyang's been a bit. He's been off. He didn't go away with the Gabonese national team. He's been at the F1. I tweeted out saying that I was watching the coverage on Sky Sports, and actually he's in the pit lane, and the person goes up to him for an interview, and they ask him a couple of questions about who's he supporting. He's saying he's following Hamilton and all that. But then she goes, I have to ask you about Arsenal. Is it your year? And I mean, if you have one question, you're going to be able to ask about it. And he goes,
no.
Like, what?
No,
he's
sorry.
like, what? He's like, is it your year? Like, this thing is, I was questioning, what's going through his head then? Do I say, because it's such a long answer, isn't it? Because naturally you'd be like, yes.
Yeah.
But
there's only one correct answer to that with a camera in your face.
Exactly. Anyway. You just say yes. But the thing is, it's like, I don't know what you're expecting. And what was worse is that I didn't actually hear this, but someone tweeted me saying that the commentator afterwards says, I don't think it is. So, live on air. So, I mean, there you go. But that's not the person I want to talk about. The other person was Nicolas Pepe. Now, Nicolas Pepe was supposed to go away with the Ivory Coast national team, but actually came back to London Colney, not because of an injury, because he actually just wanted to work on his fitness. He wasn't obviously at the team with the team over the summer because of the African Cup of Nations. John, for me, that's something that, if he hadn't already won over the fans of how much we love him anyway, but that is something that really sort of shows his commitment to try and get his fitness up for the team, and to put his national team aside for a second to do that, I think shows real character.
Yeah, and it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was kind of weird because I think that the national team tweeted out that it was an injury, but then it was like if it wasn't an injury, and like it was clear that he stayed to train. So that says a lot about him, and it also says a lot about the way this club's being run now. I think that to now, I don't think it was all him. I think that the management, and I imagine Edu probably had a say in this, that like, listen, we're going to need you. You're really important. Like, this is please come back and start and train with us and make sure that you're fit, which I think that is just a great, I don't want to say an indictment because that's something negative connotation, but I think that says a lot about how this club is being run right now from a footballing perspective. We know how important he is to this team. An injury would not be an option right now, and getting match fit, because you could tell the talent's there, but maybe he's not feeling comfortable yet. I think maybe taking his mind out of Premier League and putting him now in the national team again might mess up that flow that he might be getting and throw off his rhythm a little bit. So making him laser focused on the Premier League right now and getting into the rhythm of things, I think is key right now. And I think that from him and from the club's perspective, it was a brilliant move.
Mike, how much does it worry you that he's not scored yet?
I mean, it doesn't bother me yet. I mean, if he'd had zero impact on the game, if he had just not looked like he was adjusting or being bedded in. Oh wow, that's
that was the worst bell.
Oh, my phone was touching the base and it ruined the entire. It's very difficult.
It was the end of your bell. That was what
people think. Yeah, people. I see what you did there. Yeah, I see what you did there. Yeah, I mean, you've seen some sparks of absolute brilliance. He's certainly, he's not spending the first 4 games of the season looking like like a Theo Walcott type. I mean, you know why we bought him, and you've seen every sign that he's going to come good. So how he hasn't scored yet, he should have certainly in the Liverpool game. He had ample opportunity. That's probably the game where he had the most opportunity to put one in. But it's just one of those situations where the guy's going to start scoring a lot when he does. But as long as he keeps impacting the game, as long as he keeps his threat and his movement and speed is pulling defenses away from other attacking players that we have, then he's doing his job. And I mean, he's an every week starter as far as I'm concerned. They could start that front 3 every week, figure out what's going on behind them. I think we need to do, which I have a feeling you're going to get to that. But no concerns whatsoever about him. And I cannot say how strongly I agree with John about the way this club is being run during the international breaks. I mean, we are not passive anymore. We are dictating the play. And that is an indictment on the previous regime. John knows all about indictments, but but it just seemed like we were just kind of the nice guys who didn't push our weight around. And then we said, oh, but we're the top, we're one of the top 5 clubs in the world. Well, now we're acting like it, not necessarily on the pitch yet, but it starts off the pitch, and things like making sure Pepe is focused on one thing, not 2. And making sure that he's, is fit. And if he's not fully match fit, he doesn't go undo the work towards that into, I don't know who Ivory Coast is playing, but I would imagine they can probably win without him in these games. And so be it. I think I back him to score against Watford.
I'm going to throw to a question that came in on Twitter. One is related to you, Mike, which we'll come to in a second. But John, there's a question that came in from Twitter, which I'm going to share on the screen for you now once my decide to start working. From Laca Lamar 10 is at Laca _ Lamar. Can you imagine if we'd assigned Lamar and we got Lacamar? That's the duo. John, Laca Lamar 10 says, do you really think we are interested in Upamecano? We already have Socrates, Luiz, Rob, Chambers, Dinos and Saliba and Mustafi. Surely one or 2 of them have to leave to facilitate Upamecano's arrival. And that talks about, obviously, I'll come on in a second when we're talking about the international break, because one of the good news of that is that Rob Holding will be returning. But talk to me about Upamecano, and do you think this is someone? Do you think now we've signed David Luiz on a 2-year deal, we're still going to be going in for centre backs?
I think that I wouldn't be surprised if we went in for a centre back, and I know that the interest in Upamecano was a real thing, as we were led to believe. So I think that. The question is whether we need to move some of these players on. I don't think we're going to obviously move Saliba, considering we just got him. You got rid of the thing, so I don't know exactly the other players they listed there. But I'm assuming all of our defenders. I'm assuming all our.
Do you not know who plays for Arsenal?
No. I'm assuming it's all of our defenders.
Here are our players.
It's a very exotic list of names, and then there's Rob.
Yeah, Rob. Okay. All right. Well, no, because I didn't know if he included like our like Tierney and Bellerin there, because I think that them coming back. And by the way, I think that if we're going to talk about, we were talking about Lacazette, and I want to mention something later if I don't forget, with Tierney and Bellerin coming back possibly, which is a big deal. Anyway, going back to your question, I think that the interest there was legitimate, and I don't think signing David Luiz changes that interest. The question is, are we going to spend anything maybe in the winter transfer market to bring him in? I'm a little hesitant to say that we're going to do that. And I think that the logic is going to be that we have Rob Holding coming back. We do have the background and all ththese other players. You can get that off. I get it now. I don't know about...
Make my face bigger now.
Yeah, I want to look at Mike. I can't see him. He's too small on there. So I think that we have... Chambers is definitely an option. I think that Mavropanos, I think that he's got a lot of injury problems, but he looked an interesting player. Saliba isn't really going to be relevant until next season anyway, in that regard. So I don't really think that's a consideration. And then and Mustafi, I think is kind of like a person non grata. I think that he's I think he's not even on anyone's list right now, especially the managers. And I think he straight up told him that, which we could, I guess, address that at some other point. But
he's taken Jenkinson's place in the Gunnersaurus costume.
That's. I don't even know. I think people would be upset with Mustafi in the Gunnersaurus costume. That's how much they dislike that player. If you could dress up as Gunnersaurus and still get hate, like man,
he would do that one dance move where he sticks his ass out and everyone would know it was him right away.
Yeah.
If Mustafi was in the costume, he'd be the guy that would save all the kids' penalties at half time.
He would. Well, no, he would. No, he would 2 foot him. He would 2 foot him in the box. They'd have to wheel
go and you see Gunnersaurus running out.
Yeah, just taking a kid out. Look, I think our defense obviously needs work. It's our Mike was mentioned it a little bit earlier. It's our shining kind of weakness, and it has been for a while. I think that there's some positives and moving in the right direction in that regard, and I think that kind of a player would really help out. I mean, he's a real talent, so I would like them to be interested in him still, and I would hope that we would go forward and do it. But with Holding coming back, and I imagine maybe they'd be hesitant to bring him on at least maybe until next year.
Yeah.
No, Ala mentioned it in the chat. I mean, we may make a move for a defender and loan him back just to kind of keep him off the books, for the second half of the season. But I don't know. I mean, we got David Ziegler in the chat who is suggesting that Medley might even. I mean, let's not forget about him either. Would I rather have Medley and have him playing in games than bring in a guy like Upamecano? No, let's be honest. But we have large numbers back there. I don't see Socrates being a big part of this team after this season. I don't see David Luiz being an every week starter after this season. I think he's on a 2-year contract, but Saliba's going to come in Holding, Chambers if he pans out, and there's just kind of one more spot you got to fill, I guess.
I think that, Saliba, we don't know too much about him. Like, I did the tactical breakdowns, done the interviews with some French experts, and they tell me he's great, but we ultimately don't know. The kid's still 18, 19 years old. Like, he's not going to come in and be the Van Dijk that we need to come into this team next season. He's certainly one that's signed that we probably won't see, because, when he was signed, Sanyeli was talking about him being someone that's going to be here forever, effectively, someone that we sign for the next decade, is what he said. So we won't really see his real impact, I don't think, till his early 20s. And if we have to wait that long, that's fine. But we do need reinforcement right now, which I think means we can. And we know that we've now got a system in place where Wenger was very loyal to who he had at the club. That's why players like Diaby stayed longer than they needed to and finally were let go of. But now we've got a very ruthless setup that will get rid of players like Alex Iwobi. If the money comes in and the price is right, we will move on players that are still part of the first team squad. And we know that we'll probably sell Socrates, I think, fairly after this season, in my opinion. I agree with you. And when Holding comes back, I would rather that David Luiz paired with Holding over Socrates. That would be my personal choice. I think David Luiz offers a lot more technically, and with his passing going forward, it gives us that different option to put that ball in behind. I also think that Socrates has been culpable for a lot of errors. The first goal against Spurs, when he was sort of took matters into his own hands with that going up for that header. I know it wasn't all his fault, and then he didn't make that run back and spot Eriksen behind him. But I think there are times where we know that we need to have someone else in that role being a bit more consistent. I'm hoping that Rob Holding coming back, and that is the next thing I want to talk about, John, is Holding coming back is huge. And that also linked into other players coming back, which you wanted to mention, which is Tierney and Bellerin. We were originally told that they'd be back in full training in October.
Right.
A couple of weeks ago, we were then updated that they would be back in full training in September, which is amazing news. Bringing those three back in, and once those three are back in, how much of an impact is that on this team?
Absolutely huge. And I'll tell you the biggest way I think that it's going to impact us. I was having a discussion with on a chat that I'm on, and we were talking about the dynamism of our attack. And we were comparing it to Liverpool, and we were saying, well, they have a very, at this point, a much more dynamic attack. That I think that'll change a little bit just in general with putting all of this aside, when Pepe starts firing on all cylinders. I think that all of a sudden that's going to bring something a whole new to the attack. But I think our biggest issue right now in terms of adding dynamism to our attack is our wing back positions. And I think that Maitland-Niles has done a great job. I think Monreal was a very safe, always put in a performance, was very, very solid. What I think Tierney is going to be able to bring is a much, he's going to offer much more of a threat on the side. Kolasinac is a great player. I think he's got his frail. We all know what is.
Just look at Mike's face when you said.
Hold on.
I love Kolasinac. I have his name on the back of a kit, but I've never heard someone say he's a great player.
I'm not saying it's a starter at the club. I'm saying that when you need somebody to put in a shift who could put in a threat, he's there. But he's not going to transform your attack, and he's a liability defensively. Yeah. All right. So, but for he's a big. Remember when we signed him, it was like so exciting. This he was like this freight train. Like we hadn't had a player like that in a long time. I guess maybe great is putting it too much. Fair enough. But what I will say is that he has a lot of deficiencies, specifically in his attacking part of his game, in his defensive part of his game. But also he's very limited in attack. He can get to the byline really well, and he can put that cut back in. That's great and all. The problem is that a lot of the time it displaces our striker, and now with Tierney coming on, he's going to be offering much more of a threat from that. He's going to be, I think he's going to be able to put a lot more quality into the box, and what that's going to allow to happen, I think, without getting into too much detail, is that Aubameyang and Lacazette are going to be occupying the box together a lot more, which I think that is going to be a game changer. Now, all of a sudden, if there's nothing coming on the left from Monreal or Kolasinac, Aubameyang is stuck there on the left. We saw it against Spurs. We saw it. We see it. We see it all the time. But when he comes centrally, he's a little bit more dangerous. And I think a lot of people want to see Aubameyang centrally. I think it's kind of split in that regard. But when our fullbacks are fit, and when we have Bellerin there coming down the right side, and Pepe is doing his thing, and Tierney is on the left side and he's doing his thing, we're going to have much more of a threat there. It's going to free up our striker. It's going to make our attack a lot more dynamic. I think Holding coming back is also a big deal, because I think that he was one of our best defenders up until his injury. I think it was at the 2-2 draw against Man United, and that took him out of the game. So, look, I think that he's going to be massive. I think it's going to be a huge deal for Tierney to come back. I hope that he can hit the ground running in the Premier League. I know that some people have doubts about that. I'm not one of those people. I think that he's going to be doing really good here, and I think that it's going to make our attack much more dynamic once he's here.
We have such a massive change in our back four to come in the next 2 months. Literally the back four we started the season with, and the back four that we probably will have when we're done with the October international break, is there's going to be one common thread, and it's not even someone that plays every single week. It's going to be either Socrates or Luis. But I just worry a little bit about how quickly the team gels. I mean, anytime you switch players up, there's, whether it's in front of Leno and the communication with him, whether it's with them, whether it's the tie between the back line and the midfield, there's going to be some growing pains. We have a fairly flat track in front of us relative to the start of the season. We got one game against United in the middle of other winnable games. So it's probably a good time to start doing that. But, can we just – we're not going to have 6 straight clean sheets as soon as these guys come in from injury and come back on the pitch. So I hope we can kind of see small steps and signs of improvement, even if they may not show in the final score of the game, but where we're going to be in December or January, assuming these guys are still healthy and start to play together every single week, I can't wait to see.
That's actually an interesting question Dave just asked. Is Bellerin becoming a better player since he's been out injured? And just for a second, I think that there's he's been talking about how he's worked on some of the deficiencies in his game. Since he's been injured. And we hear that all the time with players that get injured. They get to focus on certain aspects that make them better. And some players even come back better. Bellerin doesn't seem to be lacking any confidence, so hopefully that's the case with him.
I like the question underneath that about the 4-1 from a Chinese. And then Tom, whose last name is literally Canton, saying he doesn't like Chinese. Parents own a Chinese restaurant in Leicester Square. Come on.
They don't own that restaurant.
I don't know. I've seen it a ton of times.
Every time Mike comes to London, he sends me a picture of this restaurant that's called Canton. I didn't realise it was in Leicester Square. I thought it was some random.
No, it's on that side street off of Gerrard Street.
You're telling me where it is when I've sent you a picture of it before. I know.
I'm telling your fans where it is.
If you want to go visit the Canton restaurant, I won't be getting any money from it.
If you're listening, Cantons, make sure you give us some royalties here.
It's actually like 3 or 4 doors down from a bar that calls itself on the front of it the world's like most fun or best gay bar in the world. So if you go in there and use the coupon code Mike loves Chinese food, you get 20% off.
I thought you were going to say cheat code the Gooner tool.
That's what I would have suggested. Like, oh, we love that show. Yeah, I almost did the accent, and then that would have been really unfortunate.
They've asked in the chat. They were like, I said, I'm not fun. I'm not, other than Indian food, I'm really not a fan of Asian cuisine. I'm really not that guy. It's just not my thing. It's really
you like indigenous things.
This conversation is getting slightly dangerous.
No, it's not. No, but Georgia absolutely loves like Chinese, and that's every time they get takeaway, it's always that, and I end up with chicken balls and chips, and that's just
the first thing I do when I get to London is I go straight to. I hate that it's called Gerrard Street, but I go straight there because the Chinese food in Soho is. We don't have anything like that here. But Bellerin.
Yes, back to where we were.
He has returned from injury, from a serious long-term. Well, it wasn't even that long-term, but a serious injury once before, and he spent pretty much a year performing at a level where, certain people were trying to run him out of town, and so again, this is a more serious injury than the ankle that he came back from 2 years ago. So. Give them some time. I mean, we need these guys. We know they're good. They may not be an incredibly solid unit in the first 2 or 3 games that they play together, but I can't wait. I can't wait for his return.
That's the thing. I think about being a unit. I think actually them being out at the same time, I think is going to be beneficial for them. They build up that natural chemistry between them off the field.
You've seen the picture from good old Stu McFarlane.
It literally gets posted everywhere. That picture.
Look, man. When I'm not on Pornhub, I want to see Arsenal players hugging each other. It's as exciting
on that because you put your own podcast there.
Not anymore. We're much more professional now. We don't.
Really?
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, those photos are incredible, and I just wonder who takes them.
So, speaking of your podcast, which I know you're
I absolutely just wedged that in there.
Dragomir Vadarov at Vadarov94, big fan of the show, long time listener. He's a big fan. He says since they've been making moves all summer, who is the deal maker and who is the deal broker in the Mike and Andy duo?
Andy and I will never reveal our tactics.
Who brokered the Stuart McFarlane, which you can go and find an interview with him very soon on the Gooner podcast, which
tomorrow at 7 p.m. UK time.
7. There you go. There's your plug.
Thank you, Tom.
That's the only reason you wanted to come on tonight, is so you could plug that. Right?
No, actually, there was a second reason, which is much more acceptable. When it comes to charitable needs, but and I also love you and John, and I just like being with you.
So who is the broker and who is the deal maker? That's
it's a team effort. But given that it's a team effort, obviously I book all the guests. So.
That's fair enough. Right. I am very well aware of the fact that we have been talking for 40 minutes and still have yet to cover what is on the horizon, which is, of course, the Watford game. But before we move on, there's one thing that I have to talk about because I put it in the thumbnail and the title, which is the very small matter of talking about a player that's already left, not part of Arsenal, but had a fantastic debut for the Netherlands, and that's Donyell Malen. Obviously left Arsenal a couple of years back, went to PSV, he's done very well, come through the ranks there. Now, I put out the tweet saying that is this going to be another case of Serge Gnabry? Yeah. Because it feels very much like we've let players go. Some people retorted, was like, it's nothing to do, because I said that maybe if we had the current structure we have that wants to promote youth, that actually you can see players like Reece Nelson and Willock have got a very clear route into the first team. Maybe if that was there back then, and the loyalty to a lot of our experienced players and first team players and even young players in the squad when Wenger was around was there, maybe if that loyalty has now been removed, the likes of Donyell Malen and Gnabry may have got more of a chance. John, do you think that's true, or do you think it would have happened anyway?
It's a little unclear. I feel like that with the change in the structure of how this club is being run, that a lot to kind of look back and say, hey, would this have happened or that happened? I think that a lot of it would have been up in the air, and a lot of it would have been like, was he performing? Was he actually doing what he's supposed to be doing? Is he actually providing a product to the team that we can use and help us win? I think those are the things that we're focusing on now as a club. So it's a little hard to say, and it's one of those things where when you're looking at all these young German players that played for us and didn't do well and then go to Germany and like tear it up. And now all of a sudden we're looking back at it. Obviously 2 is not a very big sample size, but when you're considering, look, maybe they could have had a better chance had things been differently, had we had a little bit, it's hard to imagine that wouldn't be the case. Let's put it that way. If we didn't have the quality players that we have now, I feel like with one of Gnabry's problems was that when Wenger's preference to certain players on the squad at the time really made it hard for him to make a breakthrough. And I think part of it was just him not performing as well, to give credit to the prior regime as well. It's not just an indictment of them all the time. Maybe he wasn't performing the way he should have been. But I think when you're looking at a player like this, he is an exciting young talent, and it's another one. So it is a little bit frustrating. I think in the back of your head, you kind of hope that he doesn't do well. At least I do.
Yeah. I mean,
I'm sorry, but it is what it is, and to be fair, look,
I'm pretty sure he's hoping that you don't do well as well.
He doesn't even know why he doesn't do.
I saw it on his Twitter.
He just tweeted that. Actually, he said "F you."
He's saving this for when he wins the Ballon d'Or. He's just going to tweet you this video.
That would be great. Look, man,
how about them apples?
Look. At the end of the day, I hope he does whatever he does. Whatever, I don't care. But he's not an Arsenal player.
That's what we want.
Yeah.
It's Yonic Mack in the chat says that we say the structures have changed, but we also let go of Javier Amechi, who is another player I think we shouldn't have let go.
Can't keep everybody.
No, you can't. I think it's very true to say that. The thing with Amechi is that he really did want to go. That's been known for it. Yeah,
we want to hold on to these promising players, and then we also want to sign 5 guys every transfer.
No, exactly.
Window. Unless we can get 19 players on the pitch, I don't know how. And
Amechi was a right-sided winger, as far as I'm aware, and you've just spent £72 million on a right winger. I mean, your options there and your route into the first team is really going to be limited. And I think the reason that Reece Nelson can take a little bit more of an assured look at things is because Aubameyang is the wrong side of 30 now, and he's playing out of position on that left-hand side. I think puts him in decent stead. I think that he gives us another option. But the only thing for him that will be worrying is that he's also got Saka and he's also got Martinelli, who can also play on the left-hand side. And that is now a very convoluted area. In my opinion, in January, Saka should go out on loan, 100 million%. I think he needs game time. I think this kid is special. I really like Martinelli, and I'm really glad he's been promoted to the first team immediately. I mean, we talked... And we got that little cheeky exclusive over during the American tour when we had with Tim on from Venice Beach FC. And he said that when he chatted to Chambers said that Martinelli was really impressing them, and that he was training with the first team, and that he wanted him he thought he would come straight into the first team, and he has done that. And it's great to see him come on against Newcastle in that game. And I think that hopefully in those Europa League fixtures, you're going to see a really exciting front line of Nelson and Martinelli and Saka possibly as a front three. You see Martinelli possibly playing more central. He has done that for Ituano in Brazil. So we'll have to see what happens. I'm really excited about the Europa League game to see some of those younger guys. We talk about the Europa League in not the most glowing of terms, but I think it's a competition in which we can certainly experiment and see. I mean, I'm kind of intrigued to see David Luiz possibly playing as a defensive midfielder in some of those games, just to experiment with that. So it's going to be interesting. It's a chance to try new things, and that is always good. John is very happy about that.
I think that'd be really cool to see. I think that would be an interesting thing to see.
Have I escaped any possibility that you're going to ask me about Daniel Malen, because I have him up on Wikipedia and everything.
Go for it, mate. Go on, talk about it. Go on.
No, I don't want to talk about it.
Who is this?
Who is this guy?
He is a Dutch professional footballer who plays as a forward. I'm fine not answering questions about him because I don't know the first thing about him. I remember him playing for Arsenal, but I didn't cry when he left.
Speaking with Danny from Burkat Wonderland, Danny used to rave about him all the time and really wanted him to get in. I've heard conflicting things. Some people have said to me it was the agent really wanted to force him out. Danny said that he was homesick and he wanted to return to Holland. So there's a couple of things. At the end of the day, as we said, he's gone.
You know who Danny made me aware of that is now the future not you. Eddie Nketiah, or early on when we were podcasting,
that guy that I said has no future is now scored.
Their loan watch. It was just every week. It was like, Nketiah scored 7 goals for the
APCOM.
And shoot you back, bomb.
I don't think Tom wants to talk about Nketiah right now.
No, let's talk about Nketiah. I like talking about Nketiah. He scored, and so did Nelson score for the under-21s. Twice. I said at the time when he played for Arsenal in the games last season, I could not see him progressing at Arsenal, and I didn't think he would make it. If he continues this form, I would love for him to prove me wrong. I would love for him to be Aubameyang's successor, that it costs us absolutely nothing to have to replace a world-class striker.
My only point was sample size was too strong. We had about the same sample size with Serge, and I'm not comparing the two as players, but why do we moan him leaving and then at the same time say Nketiah can't make it after 130 minutes with the senior team? One's hindsight and the other isn't. So I would love for that to be one of the many things that you'd be proven wrong about, including me.
Many things.
Firing shot.
That was.
I said it so nice though.
Man. I know he almost didn't catch that. Nice.
I wasn't letting that. My article that I've just written, and you can see if you can prove any of that stuff wrong. So that's
getting spicy here, guys.
We've got about 15 minutes left, and I want to have a chance 5 minutes at the end for some quick fire questions from the chat. Javi Gracia has been sacked from Watford, and the managerial merry-go-round has never been as full of a flow as it is when they re-sign Quique Sanchez-Flores. Obviously, was at Shanghai Shenhua, I believe it was there, and before that, Espanyol. Mike, this is really odd, but it always seems that Arsenal come up against teams that have replaced their manager.
Every manager, the last 87 managers to get sacked in the Premier League have been sacked the week before we played their team. I know that it happened. It's happened a number of times. There was once or twice last season. Southampton for sure. That was the game that broke our non-losing streak or whatever we want to call it.
Newcastle.
It's happened just a bizarre amount of times, and I do think there's kind of a myth behind the whole sack your coach bounce, and that we're likely to face a better team. I mean it depends on what the dynamic was behind the sack.
Let's be real. We have just enough chance of losing to a team with a manager that's been there for a while as we do for a new one.
Yeah, I wasn't licking my lips at even with Watford's form this season, I wasn't licking my lips at an away game at Watford against even though we
Mike could coach that and we'd still lose.
I could.
So many insults.
No, but yeah, I think it's one of those storylines that we like to talk about. But ultimately, if we game plan for Watford and their players and play the way that we're capable of playing out of the international break, we should have no problem. If we do, it's not going to be because Kiko, whatever his face is back.
Kiko. Wasn't he a forward? Kiko.
Kiko. Yeah,
I'm going to call him Kiko, whatever his face is from now on.
Kiko. Yeah.
Kiko, whatever his face.
Quique Sanchez-Flores. He's a Spaniard. I'm not letting you dash this Spaniard.
Yeah, but he played at Shanghai Shenhua, and you don't like their food over there.
Play for them. Wow, that is some segue. That is
he how players and coaches, they get themselves up by by negative comments made by somebody else. He's watching this right now and he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to show those guys. So now I'm worried.
I like it. Obviously, my Spanish team's Espanyol, and I quite like what he did there. Reyes.
Did you just pick that team because the name literally means Spanish?
No, but did you see Ashley Cole try and pronounce it for the Europa League? He just looked at it and he went, España. It's so funny. But yeah, as I was saying, he was at the manager, I believe, when Reyes was sort of finishing his career there as well. And I loved Reyes as a player. Obviously, hugely sad when he passed away.
Mm-hmm.
But seeing him play at Espanyol was great, and like Piatti there as well, left winger. Like he brought that team ahead, and now they're in a place where they're in Europa League now, and he started that trajectory. So for me, I have a lot of respect for him. I thought he was really harshly sacked from Watford in the first place. I thought he was doing fine, and I don't know why they got rid of him. Javi Gracia again, whilst I don't think it was as harsh, he's the bottom of the league. I think they picked up 1 point from the first 4 games or whatever it is. And the only team not to win a Premier League game all season, which means they're definitely going to win against us.
Oh, yeah.
But I thought that was harsh. I don't think it was harsh, but I thought it was ruthless. And that's the way it goes. Whether Sanchez Flores turn things around, we'll have to wait and see. John, ahead of that game, what's your main concern? And the front three is something that the article that I've written, which you can find in the description, is about. I'm really concerned about whether Emery will basically fold to his tinkering ways and choose to change things up again after Pepe sort of struggled a bit to score, with Aubameyang being hit and miss on the left. He's shown some really great stuff against Burnley with that goal, but sort of was a bit isolated against Spurs. Do you think he'll stick with that front line, or do you think that we'll see a change again?
I mean, with him, it's really difficult to figure out what he's going to come up with, which I guess could be good and bad, however you want to look at it. I think there's arguments on both sides, but personally, I would like to see that same attack. I think that's our most potent three. I think Aubameyang, Lacazette, Pepe is our best way going forward. And I think when we're looking at whether we have a chance to score goals, which is what you need to do to win a game, I feel like that's our best chance. So I don't know what he's going to do, but I would like him to start that front three. I'm concerned, as always, with our defense. And if he's going to keep that same midfield that he did against Spurs, we said it before that game, and it was true. Like, I was concerned about the creativity that we're going to see in that midfield. So I'd like to see what happens with that. I'm not sure. I'd like to see what he does with the midfield. I think the defense is like, we're going to find out who's the most fit in that regard. And I don't think that there's much of a difference there. But in the midfield, who starts is just as interesting to me as the front three. Whether Xhaka starts, whether it's just Ceballos will going to start.
We have to play a creative player.
Exactly. We need Ceballos. Ceballos is a. Did you see?
I know it's an away game.
Ceballos' game that he had for Spain was.
Did I see?
No, I was saying, like, did the internet people see it? It was awesome. He had a great.
I may have spotted a pass.
Yeah. Hold on. Yeah, I'm just going to read out really quick. I just and I had sent this to you guys earlier, but 77 minutes versus Romania, 90 touches, 65 out of 68 passes, 7 out of 7 long balls, 95.6% pass accuracy, 5 key passes, 5 crosses, 5 times possession won, 2 dribbles, 1 clearance, 1 interception, and a penalty won. Like, this is a creative player. I think that.
Yeah, but can he play 90 minutes?
Play him 45. I don't care. Let's beat him in the first half. Let's go. I want to see. No, I know. I want to see him.
We have substitutes.
Yeah. I want to see him. I want to see him get the start. I think that after that performance that he had in the second half versus Spurs, and now what he just did for Spain, I think he deserves a shot at starting. And I think an away game at Watford, I think Liverpool was a little bit of a rough one for him, but I think that the entire dynamic of the game changed when he came on against Spurs, and I think going forward, that's what I'd like to see in the midfield right now, and that front three that we talked about.
Yeah, I agree. Right, we've got about 5 minutes left before we do predictions, and I want to get some quick fire questions from you guys in the chat. Now, there was one that immediately stood out to me from David Ziegler in the chat. Remember, this is quick fire, so try and keep your answers as undrew-like as possible, or unwayne-like as possible. John, David Ziegler says, you're stuck on an otherwise uninhabited island. Would you prefer a mermaid companion that was bottom half fish or top half fish?
Bottom half fish.
I'm afraid we take your first answer as your final.
Bottom half fish. Bottom half fish. Do I need to explain myself?
No, it's quick fire.
Okay.
I could not disagree with you more. I mean, once you've been with a fish, you don't ever want to be with one again. So the bottom half has to be human, and the top. I mean, they are good kissers, though.
Oh, for goodness sake!
Yeah, but who are you gonna? I'm social.
I mean, have you ever seen? I mean, that does that not look hot?
Please, no one screen grab that. That was amazing.
Is that not the hottest thing you've ever seen? Of course, my son showed it coming out of the basement 2 minutes ago.
If I couldn't solidify my answer anymore, it was just that face that I just saw. 100%
complete rational reasoning without any sick thoughts in your minds is that you would obviously go for bottom half fish because you'd want them to swim your way from the uninhabited island much more efficiently.
Oh, I was just thinking of
companionship.
Yes, I know what you was thinking of.
Companionship. Yeah, I wasn't thinking about that.
I'm just stuck on a friggin' island. I don't want to talk to a fish head. I want like a human being that I can speak with.
You don't like those eyes? They're just like
no.
Amir says, why would you have a mermaid on dry land? Which is also a fair question.
David doesn't care about those kinds of facts.
Well, no, he doesn't.
That's a great question.
Right, let's get some more serious football questions.
Oh, that wasn't a serious.
I saw that. I saw that question from David, who is a very good friend of mine, and I was like, Tom will never ask that. So I'm frankly very shocked and impressed.
It's the international break. Anything can happen. Josh Gunners Forever is a more serious question. John says, could you see us going in for Zaha in January now Iwobi and Mickey are gone?
Yes.
Oh, I'm going to say no.
I could see it. Yo, Raul's been doing some crazy, you know what, man.
We've got a front line now, so like,
don't care.
Well, to be fair, we didn't spend anything this summer.
Yeah, I'm willing it into the universe. All right, I would love to see him on the squad. That would be a crazy attack. Holy crap!
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
So I'm going to put it out there in the universe. Yes.
Mogos says, Mike, where do you stand on Xhaka? You still fancy him in our midfield? In my opinion, he is the most confusing player we've ever had.
Well, we talked about this a little last week. I mean, that as the primary captain on this team, you almost don't see a situation where if he's healthy, he's going to be kept out of the squad, which is the primary concern with him having been named captain. But I would certainly rather see, at least in the near future, a few games where he's not in the squad, whether it's just to kind of get his head right. And he's playing for Switzerland over this break, I'm assuming.
Yes, he played both games as far as I'm aware.
And just to get his head right, to kind of show a message to the team that there are no people, not even Xhaka, that have an automatic spot on the team sheet simply because they are who they are or they wear the armband. Guendouzi, I certainly fancied him over Guendouzi at the beginning of the season. I've completely flip-flopped on that. Torreira, when healthy, has to play. I'm a little worried about the knock he took for Uruguay on this break.
Apparently it's not too serious.
Yeah, but still, I mean, you could see him not starting on Sunday. Yes. But between Ceballos, Guendouzi, I think we can afford to be without him. I certainly think our decision making will be better. We might miss some of his penetrating passes, but then Ceballos is capable of that as well. I'm the last person to talk to about tactics, but I'm not ready to bin him, but I'm also ready to see other people step up and get the opportunity.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Thank you, Wayne, for that answer. Gary Hardy. Gary Hardy says, why do you think he keeps playing Torreira out of position when we all know he should be shielding the back four, John?
Do we know that? I think that he's when you look at what he did prior to coming to the Premier League, I think there's a little bit of a misconception about what his role was. I think he was more of a creative type player. And a little bit going forward than people like to think. He was scrappy and he would intercept balls, but he wasn't really like a defensive midfielder. And I feel like, I don't think that Emery sees him like that. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong for not seeing him like that. I think that he could put in a shift there, sure. But I'm not 100% convinced. And I'm not saying it's, I'm just saying I don't necessarily agree with the premise that we all know he should be shielding the back four. I think that.
I don't agree with that at all.
Yeah. So I think I'm just trying to be nice about it, but.
I wasn't.
I can see why you would say that because I think that there was a lot of hype about him coming in as this defensive player. He's just a scrappy player, always trying to win the ball and stuff like that. But I don't think that that's where he's best played, and I don't think that's where Emery sees him.
No, I think he should be played in with someone next to him. That's I see him playing as a midfield pivot as two deep lying midfielders. That's how I see it.
With a deep lying playmaker.
Yeah, and to be honest, Guendouzi's starting to fill that role of what he saw in the North London derby. But I would happily see it as Ceballos. I would happily see it as someone else. But I think what we can all agree on is that we need more creativity in that midfield in the games going forward. We were too passive against Spurs, and we need to change that. Oh my god!
some really good questions in the chat right now.
Where are we at?
Do not even reference that.
You put that one up, and
it's really annoying because I was wanting to click something next to it. What happens is the chat sometimes clicks up, and I then misclick, and I click the one that clicks up underneath it.
Oh my god!
I now can't even risk it.
That'll go the way of the Ola podcast.
Oh wait, I'm glad that they clarified it. By the way,
yes, by tweeting it, by putting it for a third time and correcting.
We've got the classic.
Who's really excited to type that?
Before we wrap things up and we get to your predictions, the last one is who would you sign?
Actually, it says
sing. Who would you sing? Who would you sing? Who would you sing?
Well, Guendouzi looked like he was able to.
Guendouzi. Mike, who would you sign? We don't mean sign. Who would you sign in January?
Who'd you sign in midfield in January? Why do we have to sign anyone in midfield in January? I would, if we're going to sign anybody in January, pending further injuries that might expose options. I mean, would I like to sign a world-class midfielder and push one of the other 3 or 4 guys that we have out? Sure, but I wouldn't focus on midfield in January. That's just me.
Okay.
I mean, do we have to pick? Is there if we could get anyone?
Yeah, I mean,
be real. I mean, I said be realistic, but we didn't spend anything this summer. Kyle Havertz, yes.
Kyle Havertz. That's it.
100 million. You're looking at 100 million.
I'm just saying. It says who would you sign? I would if
Jake, who should Arsenal sign in midfield in January? I'm asking my son because he's playing FIFA. What? Who should we sign in midfield? In January?
I don't know this thing. What is this FIFA thing?
Who's the best midfielder we could sign? All right, go ahead.
He doesn't care.
Kyle Havertz.
See, it's really hard to listen to you when you're playing FIFA. You happened before.
I'll sign the first person who comes off the bus looking happy, right? Since that's your answer to everything when you're distracted.
Yeah, sure it is. Right, before we wrap things up, predictions for the Watford game. Scoreline and scorer. John, you are first. What do you think?
2-1 Arsenal.
2-1 Arsenal. Oh.
Yeah.
You took mine.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were like
in the chat. Get your predictions in, Mike. So you're going 2-1 as well, then, yeah?
I'm going 2-1 with a goal from David Luiz.
A free kick, maybe. I was really disappointed when he didn't step up for that free kick against Spurs, and it was was it Pepe? I think took it. I was really annoyed. I wanted David Luiz.
They wouldn't let him because they only had one net, and when he gets free kicks, the net breaks. So
it does.
He did have a free kick, though. He did take a free kick.
I just want to see that one like he scored in the World Cup in Brazil when he runs off celebrating. Oh, that is pinnacle free kick. That is.
You just imagine him and Guendouzi just like running to the corner, arm in arm, just going like this. I mean, that's
just rubbing their hair together.
It actually gets caught together, and
they can't. They untangle. Right, we're going to wrap things up. So Henry Moxie says 2-1. Josh Gunners Forever says 5-6. David Ziegler says 3-0. Amir says 2-1. Aussie Gooner says 3-2. Dan Sumption says 3-1 Arsenal. There's plenty of positivity, I think, to take from this. I'm going to go with our second clean sheet of the season, which would then break our record of last season of 1 away clean sheet all year. So I'm going to go with 2-0 to the Gunners against Watford, who I think will still be reeling from their managerial change. Can't seem to pick up too many points this season. And although that would obviously mean that we would be the ones to grant them that extra little bit of a boost, I'm still going to think that we will beat them 2-0. So that is my prediction.
Genie red card after 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you ever so much, everyone in the chat box, for tuning in today for our sort of more casual, laid-back chat about the international break and everything that goes with it. So I got our most casual and people who are basically the people that were most available this weekend was just you two, because no one likes responding anymore in that chat. It makes me sad. But you
I'm always here for you, my friend. Yeah. Especially when I have things like Gooners versus Cancer to talk about.
Exactly, and that's what I was going to go on to, Lex. But first of all, John, thank you, mate, for coming on as always.
Absolutely, I will never pass up an opportunity to talk with Mike on here. So it's always an adventure, and I've always learned something about myself and grow as a person.
That's if I can just do that for one person, then I've done what we call in our neck of the woods a mitzvah. So I'm sure you hear that a lot, given where you're from. So
Yeah.
All right, and Mike, obviously you've got a big thing. Every single show that I've done since you've started this, the link has been in the description for this.
Absolutely.
So I'm hoping that helped with what you're going to talk about. So go for it, mate.
All of the very rich charitable people that watch your podcast have just donated their asses up. Now, honestly, thank you for your support in that. You and some of our other podcast friends have been very generous in publicizing it. But Gooner, in case you haven't heard about it, Gooners versus Cancer is a charitable effort started by Andy and myself to raise money for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We do it every year, usually from August to the end of September. But this year we started early because the boys came over this summer. And our goal this year was to raise $10,000. We're at $13,000 and counting right now. It's absolutely amazing. And there's a week left, which is why I'm bringing it up now. The one way that you can still contribute to the cause without actually even, and you'll get something in return most likely, is through GoonerAuction.com. If you go to GoonerAuction.com, or if that doesn't work, thanks. It's also 32auctions.com/Gooners versus Cancer 2019. But GoonerAuction.com usually works.
That's easier to remember.
Yeah, and there are like amazing items on there that you can bid at, and for whatever reason, because I've been distracted with other things, haven't gotten much publicity yet. But there are Arsenal tickets that are like first row of the club level, right on the center of the pitch, that are available for any game this season. Europa League games, tickets that have been given by the Tollington. We've got signed book from Amy Lawrence for her book coming out. We have amazing other experiences, £100 worth of food and drink at Piebury Corner, given by Piebury Corner. We've got legends.
Wait,
legends.
You have Lee Judges announces your personalized starting 11, mispronouncing players' name.
Yeah, that one's pretty cost effective. That one's at $20.
That's
you
great.
should have done Kenny Kent. Why is he not mispronouncing people?
This is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of non-serious prizes, but I can't imagine if no one's bidding on that, I'm going to, because I want to make up a starting 11 for Lee.
And then you have another one of Lee Judges reading smutty passages from 50 Shades.
Yes, I mean we are not. We are the what's the auction? The famous auction house. We're the Sotheby's of football auctions. But I mean, there's really amazing stuff there. And legend tour of the Emirates Stadium donated by the Arsenal themselves. We've got a bunch of stuff on there. Most of it is at a price that is less currently than you would pay to actually go and buy those things, with the exception of Lee Judges. So if you can get something cool that you are going to do anyway and donate to charity, a great cause, the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society, please check out GoonerAuction.com. Thank you, Tom. And we're going to try to push through $15,000. And if we do that, I will just be amazed at the generosity of our Gooner family, for real.
100%. As I said, if you're watching live, you won't see it right now. But if you return to this video in about 15 minutes or so, the link for that will be in the description when Mike sends me it, and I will be editing that description for you. So you can go and click that link. Is the actual donation button still working or not? Is it?
What donation button?
The one that's
donation button. There is one there.
Yeah, the one that's always been there, so you can just donate.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of cool stuff on here.
And GoonersVersusCancer.com is our main. I mean, there's the story behind it, and you can donate directly there. If for some reason you want to donate without having something for in return through the auction, but just again, amazing Gooner spirit and generosity this summer. We've seen in the U.S. We've seen it from supporters abroad as well, and it's just one of these feel-good things. I can't wait to get started on next year's.
This is awesome.
Couple of things.
It's the one serious thing that I do.
Yeah, the one serious thing.
You have to have one.
Yeah, not even your podcast.
Although it will be tomorrow. We're going to be good tomorrow.
There you go. Fair play. Sticking with the charitable thing before we wrap up, I just wanted to give a selfish shout out to my other half who completed the Great North Run today.
Oh, nice.
And she did that in support of the MS Society. She's obviously been affected by MS and people in her family. So huge backing to her, effectively, selfishly. And the other thing is more selfish. If you click the link in the description, you can read the latest article that I've just had published by Read Arsenal. It's the first one on that site. So please do click that, enjoy it, tell me what you think. But most of all, and I don't want that to be the last thing, but most of all, please do, if you're watching on replay, click Mike's link in the description and get involved with a really, really good cause and get some really, really great stuff. But that's going to wrap things up. If you've enjoyed this content, please give the show a like. Please subscribe if you're new, because you can tune in for lots of different content. Go back and have a look at what we've got on offer, and you'll be seeing lots more of that in the future. Again, a final thank you to Jon and Mike for coming on, boys. Much appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you. Top half mermaids, baby. The best.
No problem. We'll see you again very, very soon. And going out the way that we came in with the new intro outro thing, which I'm trying to master. We'll see you again very soon. And as always,